in here, Joe told us about some of his past experiences, not only as an astronaut, but as a bow hunter.
Mike Lowndes was running the arm, working the manipulator arm. It's a 50-foot arm. It's got joints just like a human arm does. It's got snare cables that grab a hold of whatever you put it down over. And that was one of the things we had to do on the satellite. Now here you see one of these first satellites, as I've mentioned, spinning up. It's spun up on its spin table, 33 RPM. This is the solid rocket motor, and that's the nozzle that takes it from low Earth orbit, 250 miles on up to geosynchronous orbit. A little better look at it here. This is solid rocket propellant in this ball here, and that's the nozzle. And this is all solar panels, real delicate solar panels that on this satellite would make it difficult to handle and work around too. The second satellite that we deployed was very similar in weight and size. It was made by different companies, so it wasn't nice and round. It looked like a bad amusement park ride. In fact, coming out, it looked like it ought to be wobbling like crazy, but it of course, was balanced out real good. This is another, same solid rocket motor, the McDonnell Douglas PAM, they call it, payload assist module, with the small rocket engine to take it up into its geosynchronous orbit at 22,000 miles. Let's see, now the next one, well, a lot of the time we took a lot of photography using Hasselblad cameras too on the flight. In zero gravity, you can see when you pass something to somebody, you don't have to toss and loft it. I think there's one. Well, that's Hurricane Elena. And remember her last fall, way down the Gulf. Remember Elena danced around out there in the Gulf a while? Well, that's Elena. That was Elena from space. I think there's another picture of it. That's the island of Bora Bora out in the Pacific. Yeah, I think there's another picture of Elena. Maybe not. Yeah, there it is. This is Elena, looking at it upside down. The Gulf, Florida comes up here, and it goes across, the Gulf goes across there. Now, here you'll see the fourth of these Syncom satellites. We took one up just like the one that did not work. You see, it's pushed out on this side with these heavy springs. And when they push it out, they not only rotate it, but it translates. It starts to move away from the shuttle, which is how something would normally work like that. That became important when Ox was spinning it up for deployment, because in order for him to be able to get another spin, he couldn't get it going fast enough on one push. It took about 3 or 4 pushes for him to get it. Each time he'd push, it'd start to move away, so I'd have to fly the spacecraft up. As he'd push and it'd move out, I'd have to fly the spacecraft up to keep up with it, get him back in position. And you'll see that happening here too. But here's this antenna coming up that I mentioned, the UHF antenna box with these lights flashing, the wires that go to the different onboard test connectors or test panels that we had to check out that the box wiring itself was good after launch, make sure that the launch vibrations didn't create any shorts in it. They built up 2 of those complete wiring harnesses and boxes so that if one of them was bad, we could replace it with the other one. Ox and Fish checked out the suits before every EVA or extravehicular activity. It just means going outside the spacecraft. They check the suit out real carefully, make sure all the seals are working, all the flow is going good, water and oxygen flow is good. And here you'll see us coming in rendezvousing with the satellite. Now, once we deployed the 3 satellites, then we had to set up an orbit which would chase down or catch up with this satellite and come up into a collinear orbit, or the same orbit that it was in, and then just slide up and rendezvous in with it, kind of like just coming up in formation with an airplane and flying formation with the airplane. You do it very, very slowly in a spacecraft, because every time you move, change your relative velocity, you got to stop that relative velocity, and each time you change something like that, you burn enough fuel. Fuel is very precious because of the weight, so you tend to do things very slowly, slow accelerations and slow decelerations to get in. Ox and Fish went outside, and you can see that part of the time they're working in the dark and part of the daytime. That's because every hour and a half you make one complete orbit of the Earth. So you have really, since you're up high, you have about his toes and heels are really all that he had to work with. And here you see him coming around, and you see these 2 trunnion bolts. I should have pointed them out a little bit sooner, but you can see them again later. Working the satellite around, getting it into position so he can attach one of these handling bars that were designed on the ground. put it on, and then Mike could move him via the arm, move him down into the payload bay, so Bill Fisher could stick one on the other side, hold it, and I'll see how they get going that long effect. Mike is about to bring the arm down over the grapple fixture. Now, Ox has put this handling bar on that has a grapple fixture. It has a rod with kind of a nub on the end, and Mike brings the end of the arm down, the end effector down, over the top of that spike, and then grabs a hold of it with those little snares, and then we've got it on the end of the arm. Once it's on the end of the arm, then it can be moved around and positioned in different attitudes pretty easily. At least it's tedious. You got to have time to grab the camera, then grab it and point it out and shoot, and then reload the film when there was time. So this was the only film that we were able to get. Here Bill is hooking up from the battery bus. He's hooking a separate circuit from the battery bus around to this squib, which fires and will release that antenna to come out. You saw the antenna come out on that previous satellite. Well, you'll see it coming out here in just a minute. I think this is where he's firing it. And this was the first indication that we had that the batteries were live and that it was really the satellite probably was going to be okay. We had a malfunction in the arm, and Mike had to move it joint by joint. It took a lot longer than what we had hoped to, so we didn't get it completed in one day. We had to have 2 work days for Ox and Fish to repair it, so we had a day of rest in between. Here's a meal scene, and you can tell in zero gravity it doesn't make any difference where the floor or the ceiling is. Bill's hooked his feet into something on the ceiling and is just floating around eating. And your mom tells you not to play with your food all your life, and God, in zero gravity you can't help it. Here's a ball of water got away, or a glob of water, and it'll form a perfect sphere, just an absolute perfect sphere. This is apple juice coming out of a container. This was suit checkout day. This is backing up a little bit. Actually, we just stripped everything out that we didn't really need on the flight. We had 2 mission specialists that we were going to take, payload specialists, I should say, 2 guest writers. And when we got the repair mission and the EVA, we just didn't have time or space or weight to take anything more than just very essential. So we only had a crew of 5, and on suit checkout day, we got the suit in there and got a 6-man crew picture taken. Sherwood and I were talking on the way back about the landing the space shuttle. On final approach, the whole entry is kind of an interesting thing. If we've got time, we'll talk a little about it. But final approach, we fly at 285 knots indicated, and we come down between a 17 and a 20-degree glide slope, depending on the weight of the shuttle as you're coming back in, but steep enough to maintain 285 knots. And then at 1700, and you aim at an aim point that's 9,000 feet short of where you actually want to touch down, almost 2 statute miles short of where you want to touch down. And at 1,700 feet above the ground, then you start the flare. You start to pull out, and you make it a gradual pull out. You don't pull out too fast, or if you end up too high and your airspeed bleeding off there, you can't push over and do another flare. You've just screwed yourself. And of course, you want to pull out plenty of time, or you drill a hole in the ground. Either one of those are embarrassing to do. Perform. Put the gear down at 200 knots. And then as you come across the end of the runway, your airspeed bleeds off now at about 6 knots a second, between 5 and 6 knots a second because of all the drag. So you need to have it down close to the runway and in a posture to touch down as your airspeed bleeds off through 195 knots. You let it settle right on in and then roll out. Short nose gear on it so it looks like you're scooping the dirt up as you're going down. And coming down after flight, everybody hangs onto the handrail there for damn good reason. The guys really worked hard to recondition themselves to Earth gravity again, and that's kind of interesting all in itself. That the zero gravity and adapting to zero gravity and then readapting to Earth gravity is a real interesting physiological thing that has to happen. You know, your body really is used to 1G all the time. The gravity pulls your blood down, and so your muscles kind of are always tensed in your leg. And arteries and blood vessels down there are kind of constricted to keep your fluid, about 95% fluid. So that fluid would tend to cool down your legs if your body didn't do something to keep it evenly distributed. And it needs to do that so that your heart's got plenty of fluid to pump blood up to your brain, get oxygen in your brain, and you don't, your vision doesn't blur and you don't pass out.
that's kind of the thing that happens when you get somebody who's been sick in bed for a while and they try and get up too quickly, too rapidly. You know, they get dizzy. The reason is they haven't been used to making that fluid evenly distributed, and they've been laying down and gravity hasn't been pulling it down. So they'll get up real fast. Their body doesn't react quick enough. The fluid pools to the bottom part of the body, and they get dizzy. Well, the reverse happens when you go into zero gravity, because your body is used to holding all that fluid evenly. And when you get into zero gravity, the pull is gone. The minute the engine's shut down, in fact, you feel it happen. You just feel that stuff start to flow. In fact, 15 seconds after that, you pop up because that fluid is coming up into the upper part of your body. And your diaphragm feels like it's riding right up in your throat, which is why a lot of guys early on thought, this space motion sickness was a real big thing. Well, it really was just a matter of letting your body adapt to that zero gravity environment. What you do is you go ahead and continue to void water and get rid of water and don't get dehydrated. And so we'd drink a lot of water when we get up, and we'd move around real fast trying to reconfigure, get ahead of the timeline and all, and that's not what you want to do. You want to slow down and let your body just get used to it. And eventually the muscles will relax a little, and you get rid of some of the fluid, so your body you feel normal, feel good. And then it's fun. Zero gravity is just, God, you just feel like a porpoise moving around. You only use fingers to move around, and don't use your legs at all. Your legs are just kind of dead weight to bounce and stabilize you, to keep you pointed head first. You just let them bump into things and keep your head in the right direction. But you use your fingers to move around with. And heavy stuff, guys, you could take that television set. In fact, that's not too much lighter than some of the computers that we had. Sometimes we have to replace them with spares on board. You can seriously pick this thing up or pick the whole TV and get it up here and stop it. And then if you want to move it that side of the room, just touch it like that, and then it just float off. And of course, you have to have somebody at the other end to stop it, or you hit the wall and bounce back. But then to readapt to 1G, when your body gets adapted to that, kind of dehydrated a little, and muscles relax, you gotta then be ready to come back into a gravity environment where gravity's going to pull the fluid down. So to do that, we work out on a treadmill every hour, about an hour every day, to keep muscle tone up in the legs. And then we have a G-suit that we wear, regular G-suit, just like we used to wear Sherlock, and it squeezes down on your body also, keeps the fluid from cooling down in your body. And then just before entry, we drink 2 liters of water. After we've made the deorbit burn and we know we're committed to entry, we're going to land about an hour later, we'll drink 2 liters of water. I mean, that's a lot of water to choke down. It ain't a hell of a lot of beer, but it's a lot of water. But it doesn't take long. The minute you start to come into the atmosphere and feel a little pull of gravity, then you can really feel the fluid start to settle down in your body. And that helps to make it possible to, after landing, then get up and walk around, like walk down steps and walk around and look at the airplane and do the kinds of things you like to do, and not pitch over on your face as you're coming down, as you pass out in front of the cameras, which is also poor form. You don't want to do that either. And when your weight over on your other leg, you pick a foot up and you start to fall over. And you got to have help walking for the first few steps till you get onto it again. And everything has to be relearned. It's just amazing how after just a week you got to relearn all that stuff. Well, that was a shotgun course, and we're about a half an hour late. But if y'all got any questions that you'd like to ask about any of that stuff, why don't you fire out, or I'll just be sitting around here too. Yeah.
What was your reaction?
Oh, I tell you that initially, it's one that I think everybody had pretty much the same series of feelings. First was, couldn't believe that the thing actually had happened, and then right away we all were interested in getting to the families, doing what we could for the family. That was the first reaction, I think. And then depending on the time span, as time went on, you really started wanting to find out what really the problem was and get the damn thing fixed, get it in the air again. See, it's a good machine. I'll tell you, flying in space requires you to fly with less margins than flying in an airplane, which you have less margins than when you're driving in a car. It's just a matter of weight primarily. doesn't allow you to build in kind of factors of safety and structure and control, stability, and things like that. And all of that you put in, you add more weight. And if you can make it so safe you can't carry anything into space. You can make it, the safest thing to do, not having accident, is to leave it sit on the pad, but you never push back into frontiers. And space is just a frontier, is all, and it's anytime you push back, find something out new, and a new place to go and how to use it, you gotta accept a certain element of risk. So you don't have any, nobody has any desire to go out there and bust their ass, but on the other hand, you realistically gotta accept the fact that there's going to be some risk involved. That was a big, long-winded answer to a real simple question. I apologize for that.
Joe, what would you do last Sunday with Dave Hartman?
Oh, we went, have y'all heard of the Confederate Air Force? The guys that had World War II airplanes? Well, they had their big show down at Harlingen last weekend. And David Hartman, the Good Morning America guy, has been bugging Chuck Yeager to take him a ride in a P-51 for a long time. And so Chuck finally told him I guess it was out of Las Vegas when we were out there, he said, show up down there and I'll give you a ride in 51. And so we had it set up that he said that he wanted to do some of these Good Morning America, film a thing for the Good Morning America show, which incidentally is supposed to be on tomorrow morning. Yeah, this is a Wednesday, isn't it? Yeah, tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning's when he thought he'd have it ready to show something.
Okay.
So the plan was to get up in formation. Chuck's going to fly the P-51 and I'm flying the P-40 down there. We were going to get up behind the B-25. He had his camera crew in the tail end of the B-25. They'd taken the tail turret off so he could have good filming area. And just get up in formation, and he was going to do some talking, and do the Good Morning America thing, and all that stuff. And so when he had enough, and so Chuck and I cooked up this thing that while we were doing this, we'd surprise him. And the Zeros, the Jap Zeros that they've got down there, we're going to have a couple of those guys come in and bounce us and just not tell the department about it. Go ahead and mix it up with it and tangle assholes with them. So we got 4 of those guys up. And
4 jets? 4 zeros?
4 zeros, yeah. Yeah, they put up 4 zeros, and we were sitting there, and the cue was when he had all his stuff done, because Chuck was going to ask him just on the intercom, when he had enough done that he was ready to quit. And the cue was going to be that Chuck said, Joe, watch out, these are badass guys down here in Harlingen area. And so he said that, and Hartman picked right up on it. And he saw the Zeros coming in. We were waiting until we were going to let them get in close so that they'd make good photos, But Hartman was looking around and he saw these Zeros coming in, and he says, "There's 2 Zeros coming in." So we said, "Rod's got to break right." So I broke low and Chuck broke high, and they split in between us, and we reversed and got a good neat dogfight going. And the Zeros had smoke tanks, oil tanks that they pump smoke on the exhaust manifold, and it comes out in blue, looks like they're on fire. And we smoked a couple of them, and Chuck got a couple of them, and David just went wild in the back seat. He thought that was the greatest thing since sliced bread. Really worked out good.
Call your wives and tell them to make a tape of it.
Hey, Joe?
Incidentally, he is not going to be there tomorrow. He's going to show some of this, and then later on, the plan is, I think Chuck and I are going to go back to the studio, and then he's going to do a bigger thing on it. But he's going to have some of it on Thursday because he's not going to be there. He found out Sunday, just before he left, that he had gotten approval for an interview with Gaddafi. So he's going to Libya. He's going to be in Libya interviewing Gaddafi on Thursday.
Are you ready to order 5 and get him back?
And Chuck and I went into the museum there, the World War II museum, and got some hand grenades and brought them out and gave them to him as he left on I'm sorry, yeah.
But Joe, I just my name's Doug Walker. I've been here hunting, and we've heard a lot of stories about you hunting Grousehaven. Bob Munger over here, your old buddy. Of course, Fred there.
Munger lies.
Well, listen, I've heard some stories about you, and Munger showed me a picture today with a spike that he added a few points on. Do you remember that picture?
That was no spike. That was a bark deer.
A bark?
Yeah, that was, I mean, a tree deer. That was a tree deer.
Oh, okay. Well, that explains it
Yeah,
then, doesn't
it was still in bark. The antlers were still in bark. That's
Yeah.
the only problem.
What's your favorite story about Fred Bear over here hunting on Grousehaven?
He doesn't have a story.
There's no stories.
No,
Fred
there's
doesn't
no
have,
story.
Fred is so clean and spotless.
No, I don't mean about that. Tell us something about something maybe he did right.
The story was that I know of was in Alaska when Fred took me hunting with him in Alaska. Gosh, what, 12 years ago or something like that.
Yeah.
We were moose hunting, and actually we were hunting snowshoe rabbits. Did you tell him about that?
Yes.
Yeah.
At
That's
lunchtime.
the funniest story I think.
Well, tell us it again.
Tell us it again.
Tell it. Tell ya.
Yeah, he wants to know about how between you and Clerk on.
Well, I guess you told him about the hunting the rabbits and
We told him about paying
shooting the rabbits.
$200 on rabbits, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, you got to remember now you're on TV. That's all right.
I'll keep it clean.
Okay.
All right. In fact, there ain't any dirty words in it. It's just so funny
No.
that it isn't even necessary. We were afraid of going in to get some coffee and warm up, and Claire and I were going to go ahead and hunt down to the end of the runway again, pick up the rabbits that we had laid down there when we made the circle around. And we were starting back down, and we heard the antlers rattling and heard this grunt. And the aspen or antlers they'd have open areas. Every once in a while there'd be an area always wide as this room, or even a little wider, where it's pretty clear shot back in there. And we stopped at one of them and we heard this rustling coming up, and Claire knew it was a moose, and sure enough a moose came out into the open. I'd already gotten my moose and Claire had not, and of course we've been hunting these snowshoe rabbits, so we had judo points on. And this moose came out in the open and he said, "My God," he says, he says, "You got any broadheads? I don't have anything but judos on." So I gave him a couple of arrows, and he didn't want my arrows. He wanted his arrows with broadheads on. So I had to unscrew judos and screw on broadheads, and cold fingers and dark with this moose standing out there, and I handed him an arrow. I felt like one of these women in a where they circle the wagons and the Indians are attacking and they're back there loading those damn muzzle loaders. I felt like one of those unscrewing judos and screwing on broadheads, so that moose was probably 20 feet, probably not any farther than from here to the end of the room. No kidding. I don't know, 15 yards or so. And Claire took it, and he drew back, and he let go of that arrow, and that goddamn arrow missed that moose, cleared the back of it about 3 feet. It just went sailing way over the back of it. And he looked, and he saw the arrow go, and he says, "Damn," he says, "I still got my sights set for rabbits." And he was serious. He was really dead serious. He just didn't want. Well, I had another broadhead for him, and he stuck it in, and he drew back again, and he hit the moose right in the cheek of the butt, right in that nose. And the moose looked around, got mad, and walked parallel to the runway. So we ran along to the next opening, and sure enough, he came out again with his arrow sticking out his butt. And I had gotten him another broadhead screwed in, so he drew back again and let fly up farther front. And the arrow went and hit right in the antler, and it stuck in the antler. It didn't veer off, it just twanged, it sat there just like an arrow would do. And the moose, was looking at us, and here was this arrow going up there. And he looked up at the feathers, and he'd look up, and he'd look back down. And that would make it waggle a little more. And he'd look back up, and he'd try to follow it, and he'd go away, and he'd look back at us. And that was the silliest looking moose, with one arrow sticking out of his antler and one out of his butt. And he walked in and to the antlers again. We went on down, and the third one, Claire put one into his midsection. And so we followed him along the runway, and we kind of split up a little bit. And I got back behind his trail and followed him, and he kind of went out into an opening where the creek made a turn in kind of a wide place. And there were a lot of these big rocks, that get rolled up. How rocks will get rolled along here, get nice and smooth and round. And he kind of laid down in an open area out there. We didn't want him to cross the creek if we could help it, because the men's trying to get him back. So he laid down, and he had his head down low, and he was really feeling sick. He could tell. And I thought he was about done, and so I circled around just in case he got up and tried to stagger for the water. I snuck around between him and the creek and got behind some little driftwood, a pile of driftwood, and decided that if he decided to try and stagger for the creek, I could just get a nice big rock and bang him over the head, and finish him off. So So I got me a pile of these rocks. I got 4 or 5 of these rocks, just the right size. Light enough I could get up high, but heavy enough it'd make a real good crack when I came down on him. And I had him piled there, and Claire, I could see him sneaking along the edge, and he said, "Where is he? Where is he?" And I said, "He's over here, Claire. Hold fast." Well, Claire's not military. He didn't know what hold fast meant. He thought that meant come fast. So, God, I'll tell you, he got his bow. He came out of the edge of those things with his bow, and he goes, "Ha!" And he comes up like that, wanting to. He didn't know where the moose was, but he came out drawn, full draw, ready to go, and that moose popped up, came to his feet. He wasn't sick anymore. Boy, he turned and headed right for the creek. And I was right in line with him on the creek, and he came right toward me. I can remember thinking that those rocks weren't really the right thing to have with me right there. It was so big. It was tall as this damn building. And when he came by, that damn arrow, the feathers went right over my head. And the moose went right by the side of me. He didn't see me, fortunately. I think he'd have picked me up and taken me with him. But he went right by it and went over to the other side of the creek and died. And we went over, picked him up, and brought him back. He's a nice moose, too. What,
The other one was
53,
big, average. Hell,
53, 54 moose. Good moose. But boy, he sure looked big going right by me.
That's a good story, Joe.
It's a true story.
Same thing Fred said.
Is that the same story? Basically, well, we told him enough. We
Well,
got it
I
down
bet
pretty
you back
good.
me up, you know, they have a hell of a time around. Nobody believes anything, since Munger's been in camp.
Yeah.
Without him, I had him pretty well buffaloed, you know. Now, you know, it's really happening.
Well, you know, Bob Munger tells me a lot of stories, too. You know, I'm bunking with him tonight. And what's your favorite Grousehaven story?
Oh, let's see. God, there's so many Grousehaven stories. I guess the deer skinning story is about a good one.
Well, yeah, we're family.
Did you tell them about the
deer?
But tell us about it. Tell us about it.
I use a little different technique than what Fred wanted me to use. He tried to train me for a while. In fact, he even had a 4-star general out here training me to skin deer. General Everest had a technique where, you know, you hang them up by the head there and you cut around, get the skin started back around the throat, and get enough back that you put a golf ball up under the hair and pull it down and tie a rope around the golf ball. And then tie a rope to a Jeep. And then just back the Jeep up.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah. Well, it'll come off like a banana peel, you know. And so we rigged the deer. Somebody came in with a little deer, and we hung it up, and he was going to demonstrate. And you know how generals are. They won't listen to anybody. He was directing things, and everything was his way. Had that thing rigged up, and he started to back up on the Jeep, and the first thing was, I guess, the pole broke. First thing. Pole broke first.
The deer was stronger than the pole.
Yeah, so we had to get a bigger pole and got a big strong pole put up, hung the deer up again, threw the rope over, backed up on the Jeep, and the rope broke the next time. And the deer came falling down. So we got a bigger rope, had the big pole, hooked it up to the Jeep, backed up the third time, and the third time he backed up, it lifted up the rear of the Jeep when he was trying to pull. And God, I'll tell you, that was the funniest deer skinning. We ended up just skinning it by knife.
Yeah, we don't do that anymore.
No.
Hey, I want you folks to know that Joe flew up here from Houston, left at 9 o'clock, to talk to you guys, and after he's finished, he's got to go back to Houston.
Well, I tell you also, Hap has got all your names listed. I'm going to make out a thing on a picture for each of you, a launch picture I'd like for you to have, just as a memento of the hunt up here with Fred. And I'll also have in there, I've got some pictures, just some little lithograph pictures of, headshots and launches and landings and stuff that if you all have any children or grandchildren that you'd like to take a set of these back, I think there's 3 or 4 or 5 of them, different pictures, and I'll make up things for them. And let's see, I'll get a sheet of paper while we're eating lunch. I think probably leaving it right here on this table here. If you would just put down the names of who you'd like the pictures for, and a bracket out with your name to the side, so I can put them in stacks. And
I'll let you have it right here on the table.
Okay.
Yeah, but what you're saying, you have a big picture that for each one of them.
Yeah.
Now, this is extra. This
Yeah, we got that.
a picture of Joe Engle. that he'll autograph for your kids or your
Yeah.
girlfriend or your wife or whatever, or yourself. Just put the name,
Your
your
wife
wife.
and girlfriend.
Well, I know.
Joe, I got some good video of you buzzing the field here. Looked pretty good.
Oh, I wasn't buzzing. No, I wasn't buzzing. I'm curious to know what the approaches look like into here, and I was
Who
just,
was that?
Checking it out.
Here in an airplane.
I don't know, must have been some Navy guy.
Okay. Blame it on the Navy. Here we go. Thank you, Joe.
You bet.
Yeah, all right. Well, it's great.
Okay.
We thank you.
Now, running late, better eat.
Maybe swing around here a little bit.
I'd kill over here.
Joe, I'll stage you there, Fred. Get out of the way.
Yeah, that's all right. Okay,
Get all of us in? Yeah. Good. Maybe just, you two guys. There you go. Go. Oh, yes. You really never know. They told me about you being Skinner.
There we go.
That's it. You been videotaping some of that? I got some good video pictures of you flying in and buzzing out over the air, making approaches.
Checking out the approaches to the airport here.
Thank you. We should stay over and hunt with us.
Is that one yours?
Uh-huh. Yeah, it actually broke part of the horn off here. Nice report. Later that day, I got together with Fred for an interview and to talk over some old times. I didn't have a tripod with me, so I just set my camera on top of a six-pack of beer, and it went like this. Stop again, believe me.
You got a nice buck too, huh?
Yeah, I got him morning before last, evening before last.
We can't beat that.
No, I can't, really. Fred, I got a couple of questions here. We were talking about doing a little interview on some of your past experiences and this and that. Millions of bow hunters all over the world have admired you, I know.
All over the world, huh?
You betcha.
Holy smoke.
And although I started bow hunting myself in 1949, you were a legend even then, so I thought it's really a nice honor, Fred, to be here with you.
Well, thank you. Good having you, Doug. Doggone it.
In the 1960s was quite an era for the Bear Archery Company, I think.
The 60s, that was, yeah,
The big
good
growth
decade,
area.
yeah.
And I thought maybe you could tell us a little bit. Remember the old indoor lane days? And
Oh, yes, yeah. The indoor lane started out in California, moving targets and all
Yeah.
that. Yeah, that was I don't know, that was that movement was ahead of its time by quite a few years.
it sure was. And one of your big slogans at that time was, along with it, be a two-season hunter. That was a
Yeah, okay, that's right. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we started that thing, be a two-season hunter, and really, that's a good deal because